Last week, the owner of a store was gunned down over displaying a pride flag. Now, of course, in that very, very tragic situation that had happened, we find out once again that the shooter happened to be a fan of some far-right anti-LGBTQ plus content creators online. So now the shooter, Travis Ikaguchi, 27, fatally shot and killed Laura Ann Carlton, 66, on Friday. So apparently there was an altercation outside of her store. She displayed a pride flag. She was an LGBTQ plus ally. He apparently got triggered by this, yelled many homophobic slurs about the flag, and had unfortunately shot and killed her. San Bernardino County Sheriff Shannon Dykes said at a news conference on Monday. Now, following the shooting, the 27-year-old fled, was tracked down, and got into a fatal shootout with police officers. And now authorities said that they're continuing to investigate the murder as a possible hate crime, while continuing to look into the possibility that who was affiliated with hate groups. Well, let me just say, yeah, sure, it's possible that he could be a member of a hate group. Well, it's also entirely possible that he's not. And look, you don't have to be a member of a hate group, of an organized hate group, especially in order to do hateful things. You just have to be encouraged, indoctrinated online in order to do hateful things, to do violent things, which appears to have been what happened. Now, according to a review of the social media accounts on the platform formerly known as Twitter, and the far-right social network Gab, should have spent much of his time sharing anti-LGBTQ content, reposting and responding to content shared by commentators like Matt Walsh, as well as Jordan Peterson and Benny Johnson. Again, all posting very, very hateful, homophobic, transphobic things. Now, the shooter ended up following only about 19 people on X, including One American News, former President Donald Trump, conspiracy theorist David Knight, who had once worked with Alex Jones. The shooter also followed and boosted Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the Babylon Bee. So I want to show you some of his reposts, just some of the stuff that he's mainly looking at. So there's, of course, Matt Walsh, Jordan Peterson, and Benny Johnson. He also posted this himself, talking about killing the octopus. Violent rhetoric. Okay, so it's one thing, of course, when you post anti-LGBTQ stuff, but does that necessarily mean that he was going to do violence against those communities? Well, that's where the insidiousness, of course, of the messaging by the far right, really starts to influence certain people into doing certain types of violent acts. It's called stochastic terrorism, and we've seen this a lot. On Gab, one of his pinned posts was explicitly threatening to the LGBTQ community and said, "We need to stop compromising on this LGBT dictatorship and not let them take over our lives." Wait, who's trying to take over your life? What LGBT dictatorship? What are you talking about? Insanity. He then added, "Stop accepting this abomination that the government is forcing us to submit to these mentally disordered tyrants." What? Again, I read this and I'm like, what kind of insane upside down world are you living in? Government, what's the government forcing you to do? To not hurt gay people, to not hurt, attack people based on their sexual orientation. That's it. That's it. To recognize that these people exist and to not attack them, not deny them services that you would, allow for other people. That's essentially, basically, treat everyone the same. That's it. But apparently, no. That's that's forcing people to submit to tyrants, to tyranny. Ridiculous. Now, another pinned post on Gab featured a link to a video entitled this: "When should you shoot a cop?" Along with the caption, "There will come a time that we have to do this." No, No, there isn't. Again, this person's talking about going to war with police, law enforcement. And by the way, he was serious about it. He got into a shootout with police. Now, Vice also noted the majority of the suspects' posts were infused with overt Christian nationalist themes, as well as, of course, anti-Semitism, because it always tends to go hand in hand with Christian nationalism. But again, this is just an example of another example of stochastic terrorism. Again, going back to Matt Walsh, Benny Johnson, etc. These are accounts that with people with shows, very big shows, by the way, large followings. They go on and on about how the LGBTQ community is allegedly sexualizing the children, the groomers, and the pedos, and then, of course, some people who hear that, they go, "Well, I got to protect the children." I mean, we saw it with QAnon, we saw it with Pizzagate, where you had people thinking that they're grabbing their guns and going into a pizza shop, thinking that there's a bunch of children that are trapped in a basement that are being trafficked out, which wasn't true. They didn't even have a basement. But he believed it. He believed it. And it nearly came to violence, and in this case, did come to violence. Now, look, here's the thing, though. There is this plausible deniability, of course, that we see when, you have these far-right, essentially hate accounts, going around and saying the worst things about the LGBTQ plus community, things that are not true, things that are not real, getting people, fired up, worked up. Oh, did you know that they have kitty litter in the classrooms for the kids that identify as children? This woke indoctrination has gone too far. Well, there actually is cat litter in classrooms, but it's to clean up blood during a mass shooting, or for a place to go where you're hiding from when you're hiding from a mass shooter, and to clean up things like the normal things like vomit, for example. And so, I mean, that there's a little kernel of truth in, like, oh, here they keep kitty litter in the classrooms, but it's actually more horrible than what they're saying, because they're just taking this and using it and turning it into a transphobic attack. But again, they have this plausible deniability when they go and they spread these falsehoods, which get spread very much online, viral. They go viral, and again, you don't have to tell them to actually do something violent. You just have to know that at some point someone is going to say, well, I've got to save the children. I have to protect the children. And that's what happens. And I think Jordan Peterson and I think Matt Walsh are very, very aware of this. Definitely Matt Walsh, at least. But here's the thing, right? They call the LGBTQ plus community, predators, pedophiles, saying you're coming after your children. But I found out, and again, this is not difficult to discover, that it really is the people that tend to complain the most about the LGBTQ plus community, calling them groomers, are the ones that tend to be the actual predators. Case in point, this guy. That's John Shores. John Shores, you can see his post. He says, trans is not a civil rights movement to protect the marginalized community of people. That's actually what it is. But no, he says it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry, pushing by paying medical industry, paying most media outlets. Really? I haven't gotten a check. Paying our government, paying our schools at all levels of elementary, college, that biological sex does not exist. No, that's not actually a reality. That's not even a medical term. And more important, that sex is gender identity. No, we're actually saying the opposite. Sex and gender identity are actually different. This is needlessly causing the mutilation of children, teens, driving lifelong addiction to needless surgeries and harmful needless medications. Again, if he knew anything about what trans people actually have to go through in order to get authorized for just HRT, not to mention things like, bottom or top surgery, which, by the way, like, numerous cis women go through top surgery all the time, whether it be enhancements or, to bring down the size, reductions, and it doesn't seem to ever be a problem with that. But again, it's not even children are obviously not allowed to do any of these surgeries, to go through any of these surgeries. Um, he then says this is child abuse and anyone exposing trans options, choosing pronouns, gender identities, or any other steps to groom or expose children on transgender need to be arrested and prosecuted to the fullest penalty of the law. So why am I reading this random guy's, post? What does this have to do with any of this? Well, it turns out Shores was arrested for soliciting what he believed to be a 13-year-old girl online. Shores had allegedly asked the child to send sexually explicit photos of herself and to meet up with him in person. This was a Nebraska scoutmaster, by the way, who very, very concerned about the grooming, stopping the grooming of children, soliciting what he believed to be a child. Doesn't look like not a drag queen, not a member of the LGBTQ community, but that's a predator right there. But you saw the post. He thinks that it's trans that's harming the children. But apparently what he was up to, totally fine. Not a problem. Not at all grooming. But it was. It's exactly what he was doing. He was preying on a child and attempting to groom one. And so it is these people that are the real threats. Okay? It's not the LGBTQ plus community that is the real threat. Because that community represents love. Love in all forms. Okay? Whereas these people, Matt Walsh, all the other, again, anti-trans, homophobic bigots, those are the people that represent hate. And hate is the real problem in our society.